Last year, I made a video predicting that the Unova Tour would contain a massive amount of content, considering all that Niantic had to work with in the Unova region. 156 Pokémon, more than a dozen legendaries, including not one, not two, but 3 trios that could appear in the wild. I predicted that Pokémon Go could easily craft a memorable, fun-filled, action-packed weekend for players everywhere to enjoy. Let's check in and see how that went. Well, crab apples. Seems many players considered this past weekend to be a complete dumpster fire. Now, personally, I don't think the event was as bad as many people made it out to be. In fact, many of the complaints, such as the shiny rates, shouldn't have been a surprise to anyone who's played previous tour events, which have always contained a small selection of Pokemon with boosted shiny odds. But the complaints are understandable for the Unova Tour since it definitely didn't feel like there was a wide selection, because the boosted Pokemon were Deerling, 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 Basculin, and Basculin. It also didn't help that the featured Pokemon all have pretty weak shinies. But since there's no shortage of people criticizing the Unova Tour, let's continue being the trailblazing mavericks that we are, and instead look ahead to the Kalos Tour, coming in early 2026. In previous prediction videos, I've tried to assemble a rough approximation of what the event will look like by layering previous iterations of the tour events over the next generation of Pokemon. But I almost can't do that anymore, because the Pokemon Go tour event timeline has officially reached uncharted territory, like a ship sent out into space that's wandered into unmapped sky. We are now in parts of the Pokemon universe that simply laugh at the most basic of laws. Welcome to the strange world that is Kalos. The Unova region featured in this past weekend's Unova Tour had 156 Pokemon to feature, which ended up being 155 since Keldeo wasn't invited. Kalos has less than half that amount, with just 72. The region featured in Pokemon X and Y has by far the lowest number of new Pokemon introduced in any main series game. And the reason for this is that Pokemon X and Y is when Game Freak began introducing brand new gameplay mechanics to the series, like Terastallization in Scarlet and Violet, Gigantamax in Sword and Shield, and in X and Y, Mega Evolutions. X and Y contain 48 Mega Evolutions to previous Pokemon, which, if you count as new, would bring the total number of Pokemon to a more respectable 120. But you can't count it as new because they're not new. So let's call that prediction number 1. The Kalos Tour will lean heavily into Mega Evolved Pokemon. This won't be brand new content for most players, since most of the Mega Evolutions have all been featured, with boosted shiny odds upon their release. It also won't be all that exciting because you can't catch Mega Evolved Pokemon. But there are currently 6 unreleased Mega Pokemon, and while I'm sure some of them will see a release over the course of the next year, 1, or more accurately 2, will be the main focus of my first bold prediction for the Kalos Tour. Prediction number 2. Mega Mewtwo X and Mega Mewtwo Y will release at the Kalos Tour. The Unova Tour had Black and White Kyurem, the Sinnoh Tour had origin forms of Palkia and Dialga, and there isn't really anything else comparable to that in Kalos. We already have Mega Rayquaza, Primal Kyogre, and Primal Groudon. The only thing major we're missing from this region is Mega Mewtwo. Knowing Niantic, Mega Mewtwo will require an unusually high amount of Mega Energy to evolve, i.e. doing a lot of raids and using a lot of raid passes, and you'll have to do this for both X and Y versions. Mega Mewtwo's aside, I imagine we will have the other unreleased Megas, Sharpedo, Camerupt, Metagross, and Audino over the course of the next year. But let's see what else the Kalos region has in store, because it tells an interesting story, starting with the regular spawns. Every single tour event has featured the release of any previously unreleased shiny Pokemon from the respective generation. For the Unova Tour, that only meant the Deerling line and the regional Pokemon. But for Kalos, excluding the regionals, it means the Honedge line, which hasn't been released at all, though data mines for the game's code suggest it could be released soon, and Carbink. All other Pokemon in Kalos have already had their shinies released. Now, I know what you're thinking, that looks pretty grim, but let me tell you why that might not be the case with my next bold prediction. Prediction number 3. The Kalos Tour will feature Pokemon that currently have never been seen before. What? That's crazy. How can you just go on the internet and make such wild accusations? Show me your proof. Well, let me make my case. To start, let's rewind the clock back a year to the Sinnoh Tour. Excluding the region exclusives, Pachirisu, Chatot, and Carnivine, the only unreleased shiny native to Sinnoh was Stunky. But Niantic had an ace up their sleeves, the Pokémon from Pokémon Legends Arceus, which takes place in Hisui, the land that would one day become the Sinnoh region. I bring this up because later this year, we will see the release of another Pokémon Legends game, Pokémon Legends ZA. And where does it take place? In Lumio City, the main city in the Kalos region. Meaning that just as Pokémon Legends Arceus introduced us to Hisuian versions of Growlithe and Arcanine, Voltorb and Electrode, Typhlosion, Quillfish, Sneasel, Samurott, Lilligant, Basculin, Zorua and Zoroark, Braviary, Avalugg, and Decidueye, Pokémon Legends ZA will introduce, what are we calling it, Lumiosian versions of Pokémon. From the Pokémon Day announcement, we learned that the starters are going to be Chikorita, Tepig, and Totodile. So we already know that there will be brand new forms of Meganium, Emboar, and Feraligatr. So at the bare minimum, we can glean that they will probably be in the 3-star raids. As for other brand new Pokémon forms, they could be literally any Pokémon from any previous generations, though someone did manage to find a new cry for Jinx. Maybe she's getting an evolution like most of her Gen 1 contemporaries already have? The point being, I am anticipating there to be new forms of old Pokémon included in the Kalos Tour, similar to what we got for the Sinnoh Tour, which makes forecasting it impossible at this point. But let's do it anyway and try and flesh out what the event might look like. Shiny regional Pokémon, Shiny Hawlucha and Shiny Klefki will be hatching from 10-kilometer eggs. X or Y? Probably something involving an exclusive research path for Mega Mewtwo X and Mega Mewtwo Y. Flabebe! Yeah, something with all the forms of Flabebe, maybe like Deerling? Wild spawns. In the Frost Caverns you will find Froakie, Amora, Carbink, Bergmite, Honedge, Flabebe, Binacle, Goomy, and now you see why Niantic is going to need some more Pokemon to fill out this event. In the Santaloon Forest, you will find Chespin, Esper, Furfrou, Skidoo, Spritzy, Swirlix, Flabebe, and Helioptile. In the Glittering Cave habitat, you will find Fennekin, Fletchling, Litleo, Flabebe, Tyrunt, Dedenne, Eevee, because of Sylveon, and Noibat. Finally, in the Sea Spirit's Den, you will find Bunnelby, Flabebe, Pancham, Inkay, Skrelp, Clauncher, Phantom, and Pumpkaboo. Unknown letters A, K, L, O, and S will appear on incense. As always, this is just me reading tea leaves and trying to see the future, but let me know what you think I got right or wrong, or what you think this event might look like. And as always, stay safe out there, trainers.